Welcome back to Markets with May. In this episode, we're gonna match stocks to zodiac signs. Now this video is dedicated to Miss Kaitlyn Cole, CEO of Marquee Brands. She's just this incredible person and marketing exec that I'm glad to have as a friend. She said to me, I like listening to you talk about stocks, but I also know you're really good at astrology. Do you think you could ever blend the two together? And I said, challenge accepted, girl. I think I can. So this is absolutely her brainchild, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Before we get into that, if I could get you to like, share, subscribe to the free version of Markets with May via YouTube, or comment below. I want to hear if you own any of these names or if you've looked at them yourself. That would be amazing. I also want to let you know that there is a paid version of Markets with May. Those subscribers get access to my videos faster, and they get full access to any research that I've done on them via a paid Discord and a bunch of other items that we add to help you grow your skill set. Additionally, past performance is not indicative of future returns, and especially on this video where I'm giving the overview to get you into the name, conduct your own due diligence or consult an investment professional that can better look at your entire financial situation and make appropriate suggestions. Now let's get into 12 stocks for 12 zodiac signs. One of the big challenges about YouTube is you can never really control when someone is watching your videos. Make sure that the price you're paying is not astronomical. That said, I have reviewed all of these companies, their recent earnings reports, as well as been following them for some time because I've, as many of you know, listened to 400 earnings calls per quarter and review all the documents while I'm doing so. So with these 12 companies, they are fairly safe. There's not an issue of bankruptcy. There is really good growth. They produce some good numbers on the quarter. They are good companies as a starting place to do your research. A lot of financial people on the internet are all about the fast trade. These are 12 companies that you may want to consider buying and holding. Now let's start with Aries. You are the first sign in the zodiac. You guys love the entrepreneurial spirit, and my sense is that there's a tendency for you guys to be day traders, but in fairness, you've got so much going on that this is not probably the best style for you. The stock I have in mind for you is Silicon Valley Bank, ticker SIVB. Now, the reason I chose Silicon Valley for my Aries folks is because to me, Aries is the ultimate entrepreneur, and Silicon Valley Bank is the banker for entrepreneurs in that regard. As the name suggests, they're located in Silicon Valley. So a lot of their customers really are startups that are going through different stages of capital, and they make money off of that. And on top of that, they end up with a lot of warrants, so options on the companies that are what we consider the middle markets, meaning companies that haven't yet IPO'd. And with each stage of capital that they go through, these companies, when they do become public, become great earnings for Silicon Valley, who owns those options on it going public. Now, you got to be a little bit careful how you buy this thing because the liquidity on this thing isn't great. And that's despite the fact that it has wide shareholdership and it is in the S&P 500. So you just want to make sure that if you do decide this is something for you, that you really understand what price you're getting it at. And also you put in a limit order. Do not put in a market order for this one. Bear case on it, and the reason it's gotten so clobbered is because with NASDAQ being so volatile, there's this belief that somehow deals aren't gonna happen. That's a little bit crazy because quite frankly, most of the large cap companies have made it very clear that they're happy to buy growth, which in theory should help this particular part of the marketplace the most, but we shall see. Now we move on to Taurus, and there's so many characteristics about Taurus, but the one that I am going to latch onto is Tauran love for classical beauty. And they tend to be very practical in what they're seeing and how they think about their purchases. So in that regard, my pick for you guys is Ralph Lauren, ticker RL. Now, Ralph Lauren is getting clobbered because everybody's worried about inflation and whether or not the consumer is going to spend and all of these different things. The fact is, Ralph Lauren had a crazy good quarter. I mean, they grew the top line revenue sales 26%. And then the bottom line, it's almost not even comparable because last year was weak as we were coming through COVID. Ralph Lauren basically used that time to draw down excess inventory and then double down on efforts that were kind of, in my mind, next level thinking. And they continue to grow that and get higher and higher price points as a premium brand. But even more interesting, they are one of the bigger retailers in using Roblox to sell stuff in the metaverse, and they're crushing it because the margins on that are just fantastic. The Ralph Lauren aesthetic is definitely a Tauran aesthetic. It is timeless, and I am also wearing Ralph Lauren right now as we speak. Shout out. The real thing here is valuation. Earnings growth is just so astronomical, it looks super cheap relative to that. Have a look and see if this is something that meets your investment criteria and makes sense for you. But I think for me, the classic aspects of Ralph Lauren, that's why it might appeal to the Taurans. But the fact that they're doing these really innovative things with the brand, that might be what actually makes it a great stock. Now for my clever Gemini friends, you guys have so many intriguing, mysterious to me anyways, characteristics, but the one I honed in on to determine a security for you guys to look at was your love of travel. And in that regard, Expedia was my pick for you guys. Now, Expedia is sure to be controversial, and truth be known, I have gone long and short this thing on a given day, but the reason that I do think that if you're gonna put it in the portfolio is a little bit more of a buy and hold, okay? Little bit more of a buy and hold, is because it is truly a turnaround story. They ousted the CEO just before COVID and then crashed. The thing just totally fell out in the industry. But what I would say is amazing about this CEO, full props Tim, is that he used that time to recapitalize the company and basically take care of some issues within technology that were absolutely causing complete chaos. Expedia had purchased so many different brands, they were actually competing against themselves half the time on pricing. So what was happening when he first came in, you'd go on Expedia, Hotwire, and Orbitz, and you'd get different pricing for the same items, hotel, lodging, etc. And you would pick the one that was the cheapest. And the thing is, all three of those brands are owned by Expedia. You're essentially bidding against yourself internally. It's just no good. He went in and did a huge technology spend during COVID to fix all of that. Additionally, VRBO, the vacation rental by owner sites, did extremely well as folks decided that they wanted a little bit longer term lodging circumstances in a house, not just a hotel. Now you add to that a number of different other objectives that we're seeing in the travel space, and Expedia, even though it's a little bit expensive, could be poised to do quite well if we can just get people to start traveling a bit more. Like I said though, the market's volatile, so watch your price of entry. Now we move on to Cancer, and wow, did I struggle. My fellow Cancerians, this one's always tough because there are so many things about security, safety, stability that we care about. Also, we like to buy things at a discount. So some of the things that would be secure and stable, they might have a valuation that's a little bit intense. So for you guys, I think the best stock right this minute would be Mosaic. And I have done a full review of Mosaic in a separate video, which I will link to down below. Mosaic is a fertilizer company. They absolutely are selling a raw material right now that is not easily purchased right now as the things are transpiring across the globe. You know that fertilizer is vital for food and food security. Also, because fertilizer is so attached to Mother Nature and growing things, this one might be one that any Cancerian would love to learn further about. And it's also cheap enough for a Cancerian sentiment on valuation. And that is despite the fact that it will definitely grow double digits for a few years to come. Have a look at my video on Mosaic if that's something you want to do more research on. Now for my Leo friends, you guys love a little flashiness. You definitely know how to have a good time. And let's just face it, you're always the leader of the pack. So this one wasn't difficult at all to find a name for you. And that is Harley Davidson, ticker HOG. Now, Harley Davidson is for sure going to be controversial because so many people just outright dismiss this stock, and I think that's a complete mistake. Anyone that does that probably has not taken a deep dive. Now, I have been known to short this thing, but as you guys can see from my Instagram, it was absolutely on my Christmas wish list. And that's because when they replaced the CEO going into the crisis, he crushed it. I don't know another way to say it. I have to give him full props because I was shorting him at first, just like everybody else on the street. Now, I'm really glad I covered my shorts right away and didn't keep trying to short it thereafter, because the CEO fundamentally understood something that I did not at all get right. And that had to do with his strategy to double down in the US. Now, it was very controversial at the time because, quite frankly, Harley always has a greater than 40% market share, sometimes 50, right on the nose, plus or minus. They are hugely, hugely big in the United States of America, and they have less market share overseas. And he was like, you know what? We're gonna dial it in. We're gonna just focus on the US of A. And that ended up being a hugely beneficial strategy going into COVID. A lot of Harleys are purchased with debt. And as we were going into COVID and we didn't know what the government was going to do in response, I figured people wouldn't pay off their bikes. But in fact, I was wrong. They totally did. And on top of that, because his focus was in the United States and because Harley Davidson, guess what, buys their parts in the United States.
Add to that the significant logistical issues that foreign bike makers had trying to get their bikes into the United States, and you end up with this amazing setup for a Harley Davidson recovery.
It's currently still trading really cheap. The other thing that really helped him was the fact that everybody wanted to be outdoors, and riding a motorcycle through the countryside is pretty good for avoiding. A lot of folks that are bears on this stock, they think that this is a midlife crisis bike and there isn't anyone else that would want to buy it. I think they're kind of wrong on that, but also I think that they discount heavily Livewire as something that just won't work. It is an EV bike. It is actually kind of a cute little bike. Now, for my Virgos who are the ultimate spreadsheet people, I have chosen Snowflake, ticker SNOW. And I know this one is going to be so controversial, and I have unfortunately been wrong on this stock as it has gotten pummeled because of valuation. And in fairness, on the quarter, they did, as you would normally expect, guide in a manner that suggested slower growth. But we are also starting to see profit margins improve and this company start to mature into something that longer term is going to look like every other big tech company out there. Snowflake legitimately is a piece of enterprise software that is becoming integrated into every big company because of the nature of what it does, what it replaces, the solution it provides big companies. Now, since so many Virgos go into data-oriented roles in their career, definitely have a look and understand why Snowflake solves problems within the enterprise space as relates to data. Look at how many staff you can then modify and redeploy to other things, and how that solution on the long term and intermediate term really can be a huge cost savings to customers, realizing that they are doing software as a service and they will ultimately, with customer acquisition, grow with that natural increase in data that all companies do. Now, the thing is volatile, so you definitely have to watch your entry point. But my suspicion is this is one that any Virgo would enjoy learning about and potentially, at a price, put into their book. Now, for my Libras, your balanced air-like sign and your focus on building relationships and just knowing how to create that balance between two human beings makes you an ideal person to consider Robert Half for investment. Robert Half may not seem like it trades cheap at 20 times, but in fact, if you note that the top line is growing at 35% and the bottom line is actually demonstrating an expansion of operating margins growing over 70%, I think this last quarter, or something insane like that, you realize, hey, that's actually not a bad price to pay for something that absolutely benefits from the fact that we are experiencing more and more remote work. Now consider, you're a big tech company on the West Coast and you're struggling to fill some pretty ridiculous job openings that can due to growth in your business. You are now interested in listening to whether or not there's someone in Iowa or Wisconsin or something like that who might be able to fill your technology need. And Robert Half is really benefiting from that. They're just a very large staffer with resumes across the nation. Additionally, because of the purchase of this one accounting-based staffing company, they will absolutely benefit with all of the tax regulations they keep modifying. For my Scorpios, you guys are dark and mysterious, drilling deep into a person's soul. And so in that regard, I had to choose an oil and gas driller, Devon Energy, ticker DVN. In fairness, if you guys are watchers of my daily show, you'll see that I am very bullish energy in general, because although some people think that this situation is temporary and quickly resolved, I would say not so much, so to speak. Devon Energy has almost a 6.5% dividend yield, and they are trading cheaper for the first time than a lot of the other oil and gas companies. Now, in this particular oil and gas environment, you shouldn't have a problem. And I would remind folks that usually Devon quotes its break-even rate around 48 bucks-ish. Oil is clearly not 48 bucks right now. And so they are just giving back money to investors via dividend and also share repurchase. So for my Scorpios, consider Devon Energy and see if that fits with your investment criteria. Now for my Sagittarius, you guys are both so smart, so intellectual, and cutting edge. I had to choose something from the sciences for sure for you, and that was Pfizer, ticker PFE. Now, this stock has gotten clobbered because everybody just wants to short anything that has to do with COVID as we move out of it. But au contraire, my friends, at about 9 times next year's earnings, this thing is cheap, because they absolutely, you will see in their earnings releases, break out the portion of the company that makes money off of COVID from the other stuff that's going on in phase 3 trials and beyond.
And as you can see from this slide, despite everything that people are thinking about COVID slowdown, you can see that the company is guiding to 24% operating growth compared to 2021 revenues, and the midpoint of EPS to come in with significant growth.
Add to that the fact that this company has a ton of cash because they raked it in, for better or for worse. Now, I will try to do a longer form video on specifically Pfizer. Capricorn, you guys are the epitome of the invest and hold for life folks. I mean, a little goat climbing up the mountain is the symbol that demonstrates your sign. And so I knew I had to find something you could buy, set it, and forget it. And that would be Google. And the reason I'm mentioning Google is because even though it got thrown out with everything as NASDAQ got sold off, it does still, at these valuation levels, remain cheap relative to growth. Now, a lot of folks will say these big cap companies, can they still continue to grow? And I would say, have you listened to their earnings call ever? At about 24 times earnings, Google is trading significantly below its growth rate of over 35%. You know, Capricorns, the only last thing I would say here as you investigate this for your long-term holdings is that just make sure you get the right share class. There are 2 share classes in Google. Typically on your broker, it's going to be the ticker GOOGL that gives you voting rights. The other one does not. And they will trade ever so slightly differently, even though they're linked a bit, but you should get your voting rights. Now for my Aquarian friends, you guys are always all about the cutting edge new thing. I like to stick to large cap. I think that you'll be fine if I recommend NVIDIA. NVIDIA has gotten absolutely clobbered with everything else in NASDAQ at the time that I'm shooting this video, but it's recovered like a little rock star quite a bit. And more than one person has said, May, do I buy NVIDIA? How do I think about NVIDIA? And of course you should do your own investment research and diligence, but I would say this. NVIDIA does trade at the low end of its range of PE to growth. It has a lot of really cool objectives that are happening, including what it's doing in AI computing that will absolutely continue to drive growth for years. And it does have some of the best chips. Let's just call it what it is. NVIDIA is probably cheap at these levels. It's just whether or not the market cares about that. I would put it on the screen. I would try to find an entry point, maybe leg into it very slowly and cost average down. But if we're really talking about 5 to 10 years here, this one's probably one you can put in there and feel pretty good about. For my Pisces friends, this was very difficult. And you guys are the last signs in the Zodiac, the true grandparents, and truly all about legacy. And in that regard, because you are a water sign, I chose something that was obviously water, and that is American Water Works, ticker AWK. Now, one of the things that's been happening slowly but surely throughout the United States is instead of making the municipalities become experts at things like water utilities and waste utilities, there are these companies that are cropping up to take over those businesses and just improve them. There are benefits from staffing, from having just managerial expertise, to economies of scales on just purchasing things that are needed to support that business. American Water Works is one such company, and they have been showing incredible earnings growth. So what you'll see is fairly steady top line growth in this company, but they'll continue to have margin expansion, and then you'll just continue to see growth in general as population rises. But they are mostly just stable, chilled out, making America's municipalities run a little bit more smoothly. So in that regard, I could see it as something just stable, dependable, and beneficial for a Piscean portfolio. Now, I would mention as well, because utilities and defensive names in general ran up a bit as we keep watching this market volatility, it may make sense to put this one on your screen and then just find a spot. If your horizon is a lot longer, you may just be like, look, that's very penny wise and pound foolish in my opinion. But have a look at American Waterworks and see if that makes sense for your portfolio. We're finally at the end of our list, and I just want to thank Kaitlyn Cole once again for her amazing suggestion. You rock, girl. This has been really fun for me. And I also want to remind you guys to like, share, and comment below if you didn't like the idea that relates to your sign, but you liked a different sign better. I want to hear about that too. Good luck in this marketplace. I hope you guys all make a tremendous amount of money.